Hey guys, LMC here, and today we are riding this thing. This is the 2014 Kawasaki Ninja 300 Special Edition. As you can see it right there. This is my friend's bike. They were kind enough to lend it to me for the whole day to let me have a bit of a burn around on it and tell you guys what I think. So first of all, I'm in the special edition. I was doing a bit of Googling on this last night, and as far as I can tell, the only thing different between this version and a standard Ninja 300 is the paint job. So in 2014, the special edition came with this black and orange paint job, which looks great, I reckon. And I think in the 2015 version of this bike, the special edition is mostly black with a few green accents. Someone can correct me on that if I'm wrong, but I think that's the case. But just, you know, starting with the looks of it, oh god, I must admit, I think this bike is just awesome looking. I mean, it's gorgeous. I think that Kawasaki just totally hit it on the money with this bike. It looks fast and aggressive. It's just a really nice style bike for a learner approved bike. Any learner who owns this is going to be just proud to ride it. And it's going to, you know, people who are in cars or don't know much about bikes will look at it and think that it's a much nicer bike than it is. I think they've really got the styling right. So today we're just going to do a bit of a first ride video, and my initial impressions about it, what I think of it as a bit of a learner approved bike. So without any further delays, let's get to it. One thing I love is this analog tack. I reckon the analog tack just looks awesome. Now, alrighty, let's get off the sidewalk. Alright, so the first thing I notice about this bike, now that I'm sort of up and moving on it, is just how light it is. You know, it's so much lighter than my bike. You can really just flick it around so easily, and it's noticeably lighter than my 500. I mean, I expected it to be a little bit lighter, but I kind of didn't expect the difference to be this large. You know, it just feels, I don't know what the actual weight of it is, but it feels so much lighter. So if you're the sort of person who wants to get a motorbike but finds the whole thing a bit intimidating, because I know quite a few friends who say, oh look, I'd love to get one, but you know, they scare me a little bit. Now there's these big things, they're kind of worried that they're going to fall off or anything like that. Then this is a great bike for you to get, because, or at least for you to consider, because it is so light. So you don't find yourself feeling that intimidated when you get on it, because you feel like you're basically the dominant pair in the arrangement when you get on this bike. Whereas if you get on a big heavy bike, it's very easy to feel like the bike is overwhelming. Let's go left. So yeah, this is a really light little bike, but I mean, it's kind of a gift and a curse really, because it's so light, you can kind of get the sense that it's not as substantial, I guess, as something like my bike. So personally, I find that I get a great deal of confidence out of the fact that my bike is heavier. You know, it feels more substantial. Oh, it revs pretty well. Sorry. So yeah, I mean, I kind of like a slightly heavier bike. Obviously everyone's mileage will vary, but it's something to keep in mind. I mean, I think when I chose my Honda, and I think I mentioned this in a previous video, that I also looked at a few Yamahas, and I found that the Yamahas were a little bit big for me, you know, so I felt that I got on them and they were a little bit intimidating, and I didn't really feel like I could handle the weight of it. I'm sure probably now that I've been riding for a couple of months, I could get on them and I'd feel better. But, you know, when you're first getting a bike, the weight of the bike is really important, I think. So you've got to choose something that suits your body and suits your own weight, and something that you feel is manageable but also confidence inspiring. So this bike is quite on the light side, so keep that in mind if you're having a look at it. But the upshot of that is it's easier to flick around than my bike. You know, my bike, I feel like I have to work harder to throw it through corners, whereas this is a little bit easier to flick about. But let's go take it onto the highway and see what sort of legs it's got. I'm interested to see how the power feels. I had a bit of a go at it just before, as you saw, but I'd like to see what how it does on the highway. So let's take it onto the highway. Alright, here we go. So now I'm up to 100 k's an hour in top gear and just shy of 7,000 revs, and this bike is totally happy with it. The engine has got plenty of power to handle 100 k's an hour. So if you're thinking about getting into biking, motorcycling, and you want something that can handle the highway, this engine has got plenty of guts for the highway. In fact, it's got a fair bit more headroom to go beyond this, I reckon. Like I'm at 90 k's an hour now, only because of traffic, but yeah, you've still got more power, more range in the revs there to take her up to 110, 120 if you need to get out of trouble for whatever reason. So this, I was a little bit worried when I thought, oh well, 300cc, I don't know how it'll handle the highway, but yeah, with ease. But one thing I will admit to, now that I'm up on the highway, is I do miss the weight now. I miss the weight of my bike now. I kind of, now that we're up and moving, there's a bit of crosswind, I feel like this bike can get pushed around a lot easier than my bike. So, yeah, food for thought. I mean, the engine, no worries. You can sit up here at 100 k's and be happy all day. But I'm not entirely sure the weight is enough for me. I think I feel more secure on my bike with a bit more weight behind me. I feel more planted on the road. Don't get me wrong, this can do it. I still feel safe, you know. I don't feel like I'm scared. But I reckon if I was riding along a stretch of road and a big crosswind came up, I think a little bit extra weight would help me out there to just stay on the road. So keep that in mind. If you're going to do a lot of highway driving as part of a commute, or for whatever reason, you might want to look into a slightly heavier bike. I think you'll find that it's a bit more comfortable on the highway. But as far as the engine goes, the engine's fine. The engine handles it like a champion. This is a cool little bike. Alright, let's get off the highway and talk a little bit more. Alrighty, so back off the highway now. So this is a great little bike. I must admit, this has really impressed me since getting on it. It's really cool. Really cool little bike. I mean, I know I've kind of harped on about the weight a little bit, but that is such a subjective thing. You've got to remember that, like, your mileage will vary on the weight factor. You know, whether this bike is too heavy, too light for you, is totally dependent on you, you know. So I think it's a little bit on the light side for me, but someone else may feel very differently about that. But I think overall, despite that, this is a great little bike to learn on. You know, and the reason, one of the reasons for that is this engine, and it's like the way the power was delivered to me as I got onto the highway. It just felt really, really linear. I think that's the best way to think about it, which is different to my bike, as well as it's different to that little Suzuki Bandit I rode the other day as well. Both of those bikes don't really have linear power, sort of power bands. My bike, you get a lot of torque and a lot of power down low, and then you kind of lose it a little bit as you rev it out. Suzuki's was the exact opposite of that. You know, it had nothing before in the sort of low to mid range. It was only once you really wound it out that you started to feel like the power just came out of nowhere. This is, by contrast, is really linear. You know, no matter where you are, whatever speed, you roll on the throttle and the power is just really predictable. I didn't at any point when I was accelerating onto the highway earlier just now, I didn't at any point feel like the power surprised me. I felt like it was just delivered the same way no matter where I was in the rev range. And I think that is probably a good thing for many people trying to learn, you know, because it's nice and predictable. It's not going to scare you. Power's just not going to come along from nowhere and kick you in the ass and startle you. So I think it's probably quite a good thing for learners. Oh, this road sucks. But yeah, I think this is a great little package, this bike. If you're thinking about getting this bike, I wouldn't hesitate, unless. Now here comes the but, and it is it's a small but. It is only a small but, and it's kind of relates specifically to people in my situation. I think the one thing that's holding me back from recommending this bike to my friends is not so much the bike, but where we are in the world. So if you're unaware, if you get a motorbike license in Australia, in Victoria, you have to, you're restricted on the kind of bike you can ride for 3 years. So you can only get a bike that's learner approved. This one, which of course this one is. And I think that's the one thing that would hold me back from recommending it to any of my friends. And that's because I think after about a year, you would be a little bit underwhelmed by the power of this bike. You know, I mean, as I showed before, it's got the power. You know, it's got the power to get up to highway speed, and the power is very easy to work, very easy to work with. But there's not a whole lot of it. I certainly noticed that compared to my bike, my Honda CB500F, that this is down on power quite noticeably compared to that. So because of that, I feel like after a year or so, you'd be pretty ready to move off this bike. And of course, if you're here, you can't move on to an unrestricted bike for another 2 years or so. But you know, that's very specific to the area I live in. So if you're in an area where you're only going to be restricted for the first year or so, then go for it. You know, this is a great package. It's easy to ride. It's super forgiving. All the brakes, clutch, and gearbox all feel great. It's got ABS, which is a great safety feature if you're looking for that. I certainly think it's good. I know people are divided on that. Lots of people don't like the ABS, but I think it's a good feature to have for safety's sake, especially while you're learning. Yeah, so if you live in a part of the world where you're only going to be on it for a year, get it and be happy. You'll love it. But if you're here in Victoria and you're going to be on it for 3 years, I would encourage you to kind of shop around a bit first, and at least go and test ride some bikes that are bigger than this, just to see if you feel comfortable on them. You know, because obviously you don't want to get on a bike that scares you, or that you feel is intimidating, or that you can't manage for whatever reason. But you still owe it to yourself to go and see, you know, where that line is. You know, what's the bike that's too big for you, and what's the bike that fits you perfectly. And if that's a bigger bike than this, I would say get that, because it's going to last you longer. That's the bottom line. It's going to last you longer. Now, I suppose one kind of way to approach it would be if you're particularly, you know, if you're finding the learning a motorcycle to be particularly intimidating, you know, maybe you're not very confident on the bike for whatever reason, then this could be a good place to start for a year, and then maybe you move up to a slightly bigger learner approved bike in second year, and then, you know, move up again in third year, something like that. I mean, those things are possible, but they're very expensive to do that. You got to buy a bike, and then you've got to lose some money on it when you trade it in or sell it or whatever, and then you got to buy another bike. So it's not a very cost-effective way to get into motorcycle riding, but it is an option, and it might be an option that's appropriate if you're the sort of person who wants to ride a bike but finds the whole idea a little bit scary. You know, finds getting on a bike intimidating, and then you want to really kind of gradually increase your bike size. If that's the case, this is a great place to start. It's super light, as I mentioned before, so if you get on it, you'll just feel in charge of it straight away. It's got plenty of power in the engine to do most street riding. You're going to be able to take this up the hills and have heaps of fun with it, because the power band is so linear. You don't have to really worry about, you don't really have to think that much about, what gear you're in at what speed and on what kind of angle. You can just kind of cruise through the twisties, and it'll be really easy because of that linear power band. And top it all off, it looks great. I think this, as I said right at the start of the video, I think this thing just looks awesome. So yeah, I think this is a really cool little bike. But anyway, guys, I'll wrap it up there. I hope you enjoyed a little bit of a first ride and impressions on this bike. If you have any questions at all about the bike, just please leave them in the comment section below, and I will get to absolutely every single one of them. If you think I didn't cover anything on this ride, let me know, and I can try and incorporate different elements into my videos coming up in the future. But if you did like what you saw, please hit like, subscribe and all that jazz. It really helps me. It helps me to know that you guys enjoy the content and that I'm doing the right thing. After all, you guys are the ones that are watching it. If you have any other feedback, just leave them in the comment section below, and I'll see you in the next video. Thanks guys, see ya.